Many n8n tutorials will gloss over the merge node. This is not one of them. The merge node in n8n allows you to start combining and joining data like a data analyst would in SQL. This video will cover append, the different types of joins like position or name, and much more. There will be well over 10 examples, and I hope it's the only video that you need to watch to understand how the merge node works in n8n. And before we jump into these examples, I want to let you guys know that I am taking on n8n customers. So if you need any help with a workflow, make sure to get in contact with me down below in the description. With that out of the way, let's learn how the merge node works. All right, guys, we are here in n8n, and we're going to jump into the tutorial on merge node. Now, I just want to show you guys, we have a lot of examples because there's a lot that you could do with the merge node. We're going to be walking through every single one of these, so that way you guys have this mastered. And yeah, some of the node tutorials here on the channel can take 10 minutes. I don't expect this on this video. So if you need to chunk it out, watch a few sections at a time, go for it. But I'm going to be going at this at one shot, and let's jump into it. So the first one we're going to be covering is append, and this essentially stacks everything on top of each other. So this is an example I want to show you guys that shows the same exact data. One issue that you can sometimes have happen with append is you can have duplicates. Now there's ways that you could remove duplicates a little bit outside the scope of this video. But yeah, there's that. Additionally, before we jump into, everything that I have going over here, let me show you where the merge node is found at. So just click the plus icon over here, search for merge, and you'll see it's right over here, merge. And it says merges data of multiple streams once data from both is available, right? So that is going to be your merge. Now I'm going to be using a lot of other nodes throughout this video. So as I go through them, I'll show you. So first what we have is one from Sheets, right? So just go over here to grab this in Google Sheets. We're going to use edit fields a lot. So this is edit set. Sometimes you'll hear it as the set node. So you can see in parentheses set, modify, add, or remove item fields. This is amazing for tutorials. We're just going to use a manual trigger. So just go over here and search manual, and you'll see this as the manual trigger. You only can have one manual trigger in your workflow. So I'm just going to keep attaching this to all these different examples, and we're going to go right through it. All right. So this is our first example, right? So just to show you what is going on, I'm just going to attach this to both sides over here. And what we have up here first is we have a spreadsheet that I created for another tutorial. So essentially what this has is like a band, right? Some songs from the band in an array. We have a genre of music that the band is in, and have I seen the band live at a concert, right? And this is from Google Sheets. It's just called split out node. It's sheet one, right? So pretty basic, and you guys can see how this table is generated, right? Row number, band, songs, genre, and seen live. I find if you're working with a spreadsheet of some sort, table view is the easiest to comprehend, although you can go here JSON, see very quickly. Same with schema, but personally, I just kind of prefer table like this, okay? So what we have also over here, edit field. So what I have is a band over here, thrice, genre, rock. So this doesn't have all of those columns, and what you'll notice is I have an edit fields over here. I just grabbed two columns, right? So the band and genre. So right, we have 10 bands over here. Thrice is not part of these bands, right? And then you have the genre, right? So band, genre. Then over here, I have band and genre, right? So what the merge is going to allow me to do is now combine these together, right? So I can go over here. I can click execute set, right? So now this appends number of inputs 2, right? And then you can see over here, if I change this page size to 25, thrice is here, right? So we have everything from input 1, and then we have input 2 down below over here, and we are good to go. And again, duplicates can happen, right? So like I can just go over here and make this a duplicate, and it's still gonna happen, right? So like let's say I put this to 9-inch nails, 9-inch nails, right? And we're gonna execute this again, right? So now if I go over here, I go to 25. Sorry, I actually did not change this because I had this pinned. All right, execute step again. All right, both these are pinned now. We're gonna click execute step. And then you guys can see now, if we go over here to page 25, we have the duplicate, right? So you can remove duplicates over here if you wanted to. So if I go here, duplicates, remove duplicates, right? And you can remove items that are repeated if you wanted to. execute step, and you can see now we're down to 10. So, if you do append and sometimes there's duplicates, you can go through this route. I'm just going to go back over here and, change this back into thrice just for my example over here. But just to show you guys that this can happen all the time. Okay. So there is going to be our first example. Let's jump into our next one. And this one's going to show you that, again, append stacks everything on top of each other. This is going to show you different data and multiple inputs, right? So in over here, if you go to the merge node, right? And again, we're using append, you can change the number of inputs. So, the one I showed you above only had 2, but you can go all the way up into 10, right? Which is pretty crazy. So what we're going to do now is show you that the inputs necessarily don't have to be the same across the board. Now, I would probably recommend that you try to keep things the same because it makes things nice and pretty, right? You can see like over here, this one will not be, right? So what I have over here, the first row is exactly the same as above, except I just put a limit over here and I just limited it to 3 items. That way we can see this a little bit easier because as you saw in the first one, there's 10. It kind of rolled over a little bit. So I just put a limit on here so you can see max items 3, keeping the first items on this side of things. So very, very basic on there. The second one over here, what I have is JSON, right? And I just added a music venue. So we have Janus Live in St. Pete, one of the coolest venues out there. Okay. And then for the third one over here, what I have is a festival, Welcome to Rockville. And I just put something capacity 100K. Again, like none of these will match up. You can see over here, right? We have band genre. Over here, we have venue location. We have festival and capacity. But we can still append all of these. And again, if I go over here and I append it, right? So you can see over here in the table, we have band and genre. These are undefined because these just did not exist in this case, right? And you can see over here, we have festival capacity. Again, everything else is undefined because it just didn't exist. So essentially you're creating this giant output over here. You're going to have undefined when it just doesn't exist, but that has now been essentially created, right? And again, you can, for the append, you can go all the way up to 10 inputs, right? They necessarily don't have to match, but again, it's probably preferred if they do match on that side of things. All right, so let's remove this over here, and we're gonna keep moving forward, right? So now what we're gonna be doing is taking a look at combine. Now, combine is a little bit more complicated, right? So we're looking at like how we can join data together, and this kind of goes back into a little bit of data analytics because when you become a data analyst, one of the things that you have to learn, at least on the SQL side of things, is how you want to join data, right? In fact, that's one of the first interview questions most people get asked on an entry-level data analytics job, right? So we're going to be covering at least the basics on that side of things because, well, you don't have to necessarily write SQL for combined. Those concepts will come in handy. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with our first one. And essentially what we're going to do over here is keep matches. Now, what this is considered an inner join. Sometimes you'll see this written as just join, right? So this only keeps the matches. Anything that does not match will not populate, right? So what we have over here, and I changed the code a little bit across these examples, right? And we have different names over here and then languages someone speaks, right? And then in the second one over here, right, we have the greeting and the language. And then again, the language over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to join on the language, right? So what you'll see over here is I go to merge. This time, instead of append, we go down in here to combine, right? And we do over here, we say combine by matching fields, right? Combine items with the same field values, okay? And we're going to do field to match, which is language, right? So you can see we have a language over here, right? In code 1. We also have language, right? Both these inputs, they have language in over here. Output type, we're doing keep matches, right? And you can see we have all these. We're going to cover all these for you guys as well. And then output data from both inputs merged together, right? And then what you can see over here is we have the names, right? So all these were able to match, right? So name, the language, and then the greeting in that specific language, okay? And this is considered an inner join. So if there's things that don't match, right, it will not populate, okay? So now what we're going to do is take a look at our next example, right? And this is going to show you one with different names, right? Because what tends to happen in a real world scenario, right, is sometimes what you want to merge on, they're going to have different names. So you're going to have to control that. And again, it's easier in SQL, but we're not using SQL here. So how we do this, and you can see over here, we have something language spoken this time, right? And then over here, we have language. So how are we going to merge those this time? Well, we go over here and then we say fields to match have different names. So we click this on and then we say input 1 has language spoken, which is this over here, right? And then input 2 has just language, right? We're merging on the language, right? So English over here, right? And we have English over here, right? Language spoken versus language. So we're going to merge on that this time. Again, we're going to keep everything the same, and you'll see we have the same output over here, except now we have language spoken and then language, right? Now, how you clean this up afterwards, you would probably want to do a set node, right? You'd go over here. Let's go over here to edit set, right? And then you would just want to say, okay, well, let's keep name. Let's keep, okay, we'll keep greeting and then language, right? And you execute the step and you have this now, right? Because you have both of these that are going to be saved. So choose one of the two, and very common just to put a edit set right here after. Okay. So there's that example, right? Or maybe I should have just kept the edit set. Say I'm going to turn this into an article after the video, but yeah, maybe we'll just keep that over here. So there we have that, right? And we'll keep it like that. Cool. And I'm just going to save this before I forget to save. Awesome. So that's join, right? Hopefully that makes a lot of sense for you guys on that. Well, inner join. Okay. So next, what you have, and very common in real world scenario, is going to be your left join, right? And what your left join will do is it will keep everything in your input 1, which on here is going to be your top one, and then tries to match the data on input 2. So let's just connect these really quick, and we're going to walk through it. So what I have over here is a little bit different, right? So and this time what we're doing is we're taking a look at customer IDs, right? So we have customer IDs 1 through 4, and then the name associated with it. And then down below, we have different orders, right? And you can see that we only have orders for 1 and 2, right? We also have an order 5, but we don't have a customer with 5, right? So what you see now on this left join is we still have our customers 1 through 4. They're all over here. And then these are undefined, right? Because there's no orders for person 3 and 4. Again, going back over here, right? You can see customer IDs 1, 2, we don't have 3 and 4. So since we're doing a left join, right? Everything from our input 1 is saved, but input 2, right? Didn't have anything for 3 and 4. So that's why these are going to be undefined. And the other thing you'll notice is we had, what happened to customer 5? Well, again, it's a left join. So it starts over here at input 1 and tries to match. And because customer 5 just doesn't exist over here, it doesn't populate, right? Now, the opposite is going to be a right join, right? Where we keep everything in input 2 and we try to match on input 1. Now, what I will say is in like real world scenarios, outside of n8n, right joins are very rare. Typically, when you build out your code, your SQL code, right, you're going to try to do left joins and inner joins most of the time, right? Right joins, like, there's just no point of them. But in n8n, right, if you just have this code over here and, you have code over here and, hey, I want to, and it doesn't necessarily have to be code, but hey, I want to start from this side, right? Maybe it makes more sense. I'd probably redesign the architecture to start with a left join instead, because again, left joins are way more common, right? And if you provide your n8n workflow to a developer, they're more likely to know a left join than a right join. They're going to know both. But again, like real people don't use right joins. I understand it from the n8n perspective, but just want to harp on that, right? If you're trying to match on data, like keep your more important data in input 1, your less important data on input 2. But just to show you, right, this is going to be the opposite. Again, we have the same exact data in both of these. And what you see over here is we have customer 1 to 5 with their order IDs, right? Because we're starting from this one over here, and then we match from above, right? So again, we have data for customer 1, we have data for customer 2, but we don't have data for customer 5. But customer 5 shows now, and we don't show 3 and 4 because we're starting with input 2 and we're matching to the data that's available in input 1. Okay, so that's the right join. Again, probably just better off doing the other side of things. What I want to show you now is a full outer join, which I misspelled this, but the full outer join keeps everything regardless, right? And remember, you still need to have a column to join on. So this is going to populate everything, right? It's not used as much. There is some use cases on it. Again, we're going to use the same data as above, right? The customers, right? So we have the customers 1 through 4 over here. We have 1, 2, and 5. And what you see is everything's over here, right? We have customers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's some missing data because not all the data is going to be present in both of those, both those inputs, right? But again, you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, which was populated over here, right? We have 5, which was populated over here. And then we have some of the orders on that side of things, right? And this makes the assumption that each customer only has one order. Obviously, in real world scenarios, that's not the case. But just to demonstrate that for you guys, right? This is going to be your full outer join, right? It joins on something and it just creates all the different opportunities for you guys on that join. Remember, you need to have a column to join on, right? I'm going to show you something different here shortly that expands things out. And sometimes people get this a little bit confused with the full outer join, but we'll talk about that in a second. Okay. So next over here, we have the opposite of the full outer join, and this just keeps the non-matches. So it keeps everything that doesn't match. I don't use this that often, but there might be some scenarios. So just want to show you again, the same data over here. All we do is say keep non-matches on this side of things, right? And you can see customer 3 had no matches, customer 4 had no matches. And again, we go back to customer 5, right? And these are going to be the rows that have anything with considered undefined, right? We just couldn't match on that data. And you can see going back over here, right? And these had all the data points, right? Because they were in both tables. So that's why they aren't showing, but 3, 4, and 5 are all missing some data. And again, just to show you guys where these are at too, because I forgot to show you on this side of things. So keep everything. It says it's the outer join, right? And going back up over here, right? So what we have is output type enrich input 2, which it mentions is a right join, right? And then we go over here and enrich input 1, which is going to be our left join. Again, real world scenario, you're using left joins. You're not using right joins, but again, just depends how you develop this, right? Okay, so what we're going to do is now take a look at another example over here. And this is going to be combine all possible outcomes. Now, in the real world scenario, this is considered a cross join, right? And this is where you're going to build a full Cartesian product. And this creates every possibility pairing between like peoples, times, or locations. So when you use this, right, like let's imagine you have different members of a team and you want to see all available time slots across the board, or you have product variants and you want to see all the different target audience segments, right? So this quickly produces every product audience pair, right, in general. So just to show you what I have over here, right, we have 3 different names, Alice, Bob, and Charlie. And then over here, right, we have the languages of Dutch and English. So then what we have over here, just let's connect these together. We're going to just execute these and we'll pin them. I apologize. I thought I already had these pinned beforehand just to save you guys some time, because there's a lot to cover. And you can see execute step, right? So we have Alice Dutch, Alice English, Bob Dutch, Bob English, Charlie Dutch, Charlie English, right? So this creates the combo pair for everything. And you can see we just had 3 over here and we had 2 over here, right? And this created 6. So you can see quickly, like this will really balloon up your data depending what you had, right? Like imagine we had 10 different languages and we had, 40 different people, right? Like this, you're going to have a huge output on this side of things. So be very careful on this when you're going to use, your cross join. And again, over here for your cross join, you go to combine, and this is all possible combinations. And it mentions over here as your cross join, right? So we talked about matching fields. We talked about this one over here. Okay. So now let's just remove this. We're going to go into our next section. Okay. So the next one is going to be choosing your branch, right? So on this one, the data of the specified branch shows only one branch, right? So let's imagine we have 2 branches over here. on this first one, we have Dutch and English again. And then this second one over here, we have Welcome to Rockville 100K. Again, these don't make sense, like why we're going to merge these together, but let me just show you, right? So what we have under here is mode, and we click over here to choose branch, right? Output data from a specific branch without modifying it. Number of inputs too, right? Then we say wait for all inputs to arrive. That's the only option, right? And then we have the data of the specified input. I'll show you this one next, right? And if we choose one, right, you'll see it says Dutch and English, right? Which is what we had over here, right? And let's change this up now. And we go over here to 2, right? And we have Welcome to Rockville 100K, which is what we had down below over here. So essentially what this merge does is say, hey, I just want to keep what's an input 1, or hey, I just want to keep what's an input 2, right? So you can set that up. Now, what you also have over here is kind of the opposite. And let me just remove this over here and just drag this over. So essentially what you have is a single empty item. There's no input at all, right? So again, the same exact data over here. And what we have over here is a single empty item. And you can see this is an item, but it's empty, right? No fields, items exist, but they're empty, right? And you just have this blank JSON. So that's what you would have on there. So again, when you want to choose branch, you specifically choose one specific branch of your inputs, right? Again, you could have like 1 through 10, or you can just have this that's just empty, right? It's your choice on that side of things. All right, cool. So let's keep moving forward. All right, so now what we're gonna do is combine by position. And this is pairing this strictly by index. So imagine you have 3 items coming in, item 1, 2, 3. First item in input 1 should match with the first item in input 2. And it only matches with inputs that are the same, right? So if there's a mismatch, something else will happen. I'll show you that here in a second. Example 1's a perfect match. So what you can see over here is we have our 3 names, Alice, Bob, Charlie. And then down below over here, we have cities, Amsterdam, London, and New York, right? Nothing in common across the board, right? You can see we have names and we have cities. But when I combine these together, right, you can see we have name, city, name, city, name, city. And this is nice, cool, right? Like we have 3 here, 3 here. That's not always the real world. So let me show you if there's a mismatch. All right, so we have this one over here, and we'll hook everything up together. And you can see over here, we only have 2 names this time, right? So we remove Charlie. And then over here, we still have the 3 cities, right? So we have 2 inputs versus 3. And then we go over here and you can see the 3rd is ignored, right? So we only kept the 2 across the side of it. So like on this one, it kind of depends on your use case, right? Obviously try to have these the same. If you want to match them 1-to-1, just be very, very careful across the board when you're using this one, right? If you have any errors, like make sure the items are lining up. Remember, the order matters of these specific items. Cool. So there's that. Okay. And now what I want to show you is the opposite. Like what happens if there's only 2 items in the bottom one and 3 items here at the top? And again, we go over here and take a look, right? We still have only 2, right? So we have 3 names over here at the top, right? We have 2 cities. And again, it takes the minimum. So you can see over here, we have Amsterdam and London, which going over here, right? Amsterdam, London. And then we have over here, the first name is Alice and Bob. And you can see Charlie is left out, right? So this will take the minimum amount of inputs, whether it's, your first input or your second input, and combine them together, right? So again, this is combine. This is by position on that side of things. Cool. So now what we're going to do is talk about clash handling. This is when fields clash. Both inputs have a field language, right? So default input 2 overwrites input 1, but you can keep both fields or choose deep merge or shallow merge. So what I want to show you over here is, again, we have our language, right? So we have Dutch, English, and German. And then over here, we have language, right, across the board. So we're going to go over here. And what we're going to do is combine by position again, right? And you can see if I go here to unpin, you can see language 1, language 2, and then we have language, right? And over here, I have an option for clash handling. This is always add input number to field names, right? So again, if we go over here, right? We have input 1, and you can see full names versus the abbreviations. And that's why we have 1 underneath. 2 is going to be the abbreviations, right? Next, you can prefer input 1 version, right? And you have the different options of a deep merge or the shallow merge on the side of things. So let's take a look at this. So that's going to be the deep merge, right? Here's the shallow merge on that side of things, right? So that's if you prefer input 1. And then if you want to prefer input 2 version, right? We have the opposite. So that passes in over here, right? On differences, a deep merge at the level of nesting versus merge at the top level only. All nested fields will come from the same input, right? So that is how this works. And probably your best approach is always add input number and then clean this up down the line. Again, just depends what is specifically going on. All right, but that is going to be clash handling when you have the same names. All right, and lastly, we have SQL. So you should already be labeling these, right? Obviously, I didn't label all these just because it's a tutorial and like we're already on code 23. But when you're going to SQL queries, it's really important that you do because that way you know where things are coming from. And here you go, right? And what I will say is a lot of what we can do in SQL, like we've covered throughout over here, right? We've covered different joins and all this other good stuff, right? And a lot of this can be done with unions. But there's going to be times where you're going to want custom SQL queries, albeit probably pretty rare. But it's good to know on this side of things. And like, let's imagine you know the basics of n8n, right? And you're pretty comfortable with it. Maybe you want to learn a little bit about SQL, right? And I think that's kind of how you can take n8n to the next level. You learn a little bit about SQL, right? Practice it. You learn a little bit about Python, or you want to do JavaScript, right? Maybe both. Again, up to you, but really start learning like how you can work with the different nodes in here, right? So this merge allows you to do SQL. We just go over here to mode and grab SQL query. Okay. So I just wrote a very basic select statement, right? So one thing on here is you have to define, input 1 or input 2, right? So I have input 1, which I just labeled as products. So over here, I say input 1, I relabeled that as products rather than putting input 1 everywhere. And then I'm doing an inner join of input 2, which is down below. And I just call this prices. And that's why I kind of just say label your nodes going in. So that way when you're taking a look at this quickly, like you know what input 1 is, input 2. All right. So all I'm doing is selecting a product price, right? Prices, price. I'm joining these together on the product ID. So there's a ID in the products, which is input 1. There's an ID in prices, which is input 2, right? You can go over here. We have the product price, product price, product price. And again, just to show you this, right? We have the ID, the product over here, and this one for products. And then over here, we just have ID and then prices, right? And then we just write a SQL query, which this tutorial will not cover all the SQL query stuff, right? Like teaching SQL itself, the first video I uploaded on the channel was an hour SQL course. Like maybe you watch that video, learn a little bit about SQL. But yeah, so you can write SQL in here, which is awesome. But again, a lot of this stuff can just be done with what we covered above. And yeah, that is essentially the merge node in n8n. This is probably like a 30-minute video or so. So again, just to cover, what we talked about. First, we talked about appending, right? Which is kind of just like stacking the data. You can have the same exact data, or you can just have different data across the board. Next, we talked about all the different types of joins, right? So your inner join on here, which is keep matches, right? And sometimes your field might have a different name that you want to join on, so you have that option. We talked about the left join, which prioritizes your top input. We talked about the right join, which prioritizes your bottom input. Then over here, we had the full outer join, which combines everything together, right? Then again, you have to have a field to join on, but it builds out a larger result. Then we talked about keep non-matches, which is essentially the opposite, right? Or anything that there is like a null value or a value that doesn't exist, it populates. Then what we have over here is the cross join, right? And this joins every possible outcome, right? So again, like if you're trying to test things out or assign people stuff and you just want to see every possible outcome, use the cross join, but be very careful because this will really balloon your data set, right? Then we talked about, choosing branches, right? where you could specify, I only want the stuff from input 1 or only want the stuff for input 2, or hey, I just want nothing at all, like empty. Then we also talked about combined by position. Again, you want to have these be the same length, right? And I showed you they match, like the first entry here matches the first entry here. The second entry here matches the second entry here. Third entry here matches third entry here. Otherwise, if there's a mismatch, right, it's going to take the minimum. So this has 2, this has 3, it takes the minimum here. This has 3, this has 2, it takes the minimum over here. Then we talked about clash handling, which happens over here when you combine by position, right? A few different approaches over there. And then lastly, you can write also SQL queries in here. I don't see many people writing SQL queries because again, there's a lot of easier ways to do it, but there's gonna be use cases where you're gonna need SQL queries, right? And also what's nice about SQL queries is we can aggregate in SQL queries as well, right? And again, that's a little bit outside the scope of this video, and maybe I'll make a full video talking about how we can find some statistics here in n8n, but you can do that within SQL queries. And guys, that is going to be your merge node. Probably one of the longer videos on a node here on the channel, but my goal is to make this one video that you guys have to watch and pick up all this type of information. If you found it valuable, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're uploading 3 n8n videos every single week. If you need any help with any n8n workflows, also taking on freelance customers, feel free to check out the other videos here on this channel. I'm putting just as much effort into those as this, and I'll catch you guys later in another video.